I'm going to go ahead and prep these for future cementing. I'm just going to sand the surface again. Just a step you don't want to forget, because this is going to bond to the top layer of leather. So we're just going to knock that shine off the top of the leather. And then we're going to sand the bottom of the top layer and just knock some of that hair flat and loose. Just go over the bottom of this as well. So, important step. Don't skip it. I wanted to make a quick point while I'm thinking about it. If you're concerned with your thong placement, something you can do is refer back to your photo and keep in mind that this is where the arch of your foot is. So the stitched line should be in the arch of your foot, and you're actually going to plant your heel when you're walking, and you're going to have most of your weight distributed between your heel and the front of your foot. I'm not a foot person, but anyway. So anyway, just something to keep in mind. I'm gonna end up grooving and stitching right here. I'm gonna end up stitching and sewing these thongs back here, and I just wanted to kind of make it clear on my logic for placement and whether or not I was actually concerned with walking on the stitches. And so far, from my experience and feedback from people, it hasn't been an issue. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there while I was thinking about it. So I've warmed up this neat's foot a little bit to help it work a little bit better. It's a little cool down here in the basement. And we'll just brush it on there. And we might do 2 coats. The leather starts to it absorbs it quickly, and then once it gets saturated, it'll start to leave a little residue behind when you press on it. So we'll just give it what it needs. And we do this before we sheen the leather, because there might be issues with the oil actually getting through the sheen. So we've dyed, now we're oiling, we'll sheen it, and then when everything's done, we'll put a leather conditioner on. And this is just neat's foot oil, Fibings neat's foot oil. Now the darkness this gives the leather is pretty short-lived. Sometimes it'll wear off really quickly, and other times it takes a few weeks, but it will definitely with time start to fade. One thing that you might take away from watching videos like this on how to do things is it causes you to ask yourself questions, and I think that's important in the process, that you come up with your own questions and you research aspects of the project that interest you or that confuse you. So if there's one specific thing that's visited that may be kind of confusing, or you don't quite know, you don't quite get it, it's important that you research those things and find answers that you're looking for. And I may gloss over something that completely confuses you, but I just don't see it from my perspective. And it's an important part of making anything, is to just ask better questions and do more research and focus on specific aspects to improve not just the thing you're working on, but everything you work on going forward. So just a little tip to point out there. And I'm going to go ahead and brush another coat of oil on everything, and we're going to let that dry. Then I'm going to move on to cementing some more of the structure together, and we'll go from there. Before I do the next, tackle the next part, which will be cementing the thong to the sole, I'm going to go ahead and put a sheen on these thong pieces before I cement them in, just so I don't have to worry about getting in all the nooks and crannies. So I'll go ahead and use, I use a lot of different sheens and final finishes. Satin sheen is the one I started out with and used the most, and then I've used super sheen and Resilene, both really good finishes. And I just apply these with a cloth. It's no big, not really complicated. You just dampen your cloth with the finish and then wipe it along, and it air dries within just a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to move on to cementing to the sole. And that's that. And since this is not going to be visible, I clamp directly to it. Otherwise, I would use a piece of leather to protect that. And that's that for now. Okay, so the cement has set. It's been another day since I did that, and I'm gonna go ahead and punch through with my punches, and then I'll go back through with my awl, and I'll just press the awl through to really open up the holes so you can get a good clear stitching line, and then I'll just sew these up, and then we'll move on from there. So next we're gonna sew these both, and then we'll continue on from there. A quick note while I'm thinking about it. When it comes to threading the needle and tying that knot, I hadn't actually noticed this and verbalized it until now, but when you tie that knot that I recommend, if you tie it to where it gets tight before it reaches the eye, it'll tend to just pull straighter and go through better. And it does that kind of naturally. Even if you tie it down to a little knot on the end of the eye of the needle, it'll get kind of worked that direction over time anyway. But I find that if you just knot it right above the eye like that, it holds pretty well. This entire last two runs I didn't have to even tighten it hardly at all. So just a last tip. This is just that regular knot that I did, and I just tighten it just before it can touch the eye on the needle rather than tying it tight to the eye. Another thing I do, you'll see in the videos, I got masking tape on spots where I have the threads rub me, but I've made these little leather cuffs, or whatever you want to call them, that can reach different spots on my fingers. They take some figuring out to place them correctly, but typically in your joint, so where the thread will want to run. But I've just kind of, I started by sewing little loops together, and then as they get older and looser, I get lazy and just slap a staple in it to get it tight again. And I don't know if these will be something I end up using for very long, but they're an option, and I've gotten some good use out of them. Today I'm mostly just using some tape because it was quick and just felt right. But anyway, thought I'd throw that extra tip in there while I'm doing the needle. Alright, so the straps are getting close to being ready to be permanently used, and I'm going to go ahead and bevel the edges. I'm going to use my 45-degree flat bevel. You might try using a round bevel for a different look, but this is the one I'm most used to using, so I'm going to use it to get a consistent result. And then after that, we'll burnish the edges. Well, if you've watched any of my videos, you've seen me burnish things 100 times. Basically, on this one I'm going to start with the Dremel tool, with the burnishing bits, and I'm going to start with water, the water pine sol mix, brush that on there, burnish it all the way around, go back, use the gum tragacanth, go all the way around with that, and then finish with beeswax. And I may mix it up and use my hand burnisher as well. If I don't get a finish that I like, I'll just keep working on it. And I'm basically just polishing that edge and blending it together and looking for a nice seamless appearance and some gloss if I can achieve that. So that's what's next. You want to go with light passes. It seems like these bits will burn the edges if you spend too much time going back and forth. So I'm just going to make some light passes, and if I need to keep going, I'll do it by hand. Pretty decent. It feels pretty good, and it's pretty slick and pretty sealed. I don't know if you can see that, but it's still, there's the rough edge if you can see it. And then here's the smoother edge. Anyway, I'm going to do that all the way around, do all the edges. Probably not these edges because they're going to be under the shoe anyway, but the rest I'll do.